So, welcome everyone to the Shell with Pearl painting. This is sponsored by Warminster Library, and this evening's program will be recorded, as I mentioned. It will run about 8 p.m. It might be a little bit sooner. Sometimes it's 5 or 10 minutes after. Stay as long as you can, but it will be recorded if you have to leave early. We are using acrylic paints this evening, and as I mentioned, I like to use a paper plate for a palette. Any kind of palette that you have is fine. These are old paints from previous art kits, so I just kind of use them up. But we're going to do some mixing, and especially we're going to be making some green with some yellow and blue, so you will need that. Let's see, light blue or bright blue. I'm gonna say bright blue. Debbie. Yeah, I'm gonna say bright blue, I think, for that. I would have the other one on hand just in case. Like if you can't get the color or you want it to be a little bit darker, but I would say bright blue for sure. Okay, so we're gonna get started. Oh, you're welcome. No problem. So we're gonna get started with the drawing. And so again, this is a square, and it's a very small painting, as you can see. Like if I were to show it next to my 8.5 by 11 paper, it's a small painting. But if you want to go bigger, that's fine. So we're going to get started here, and we're going to go all the way down to maybe 3/4 of the way down on our canvas, and we're going to create the bottom floor. So of our of like our C. So we're going to start off with a curve on the left side of the canvas. It's going to kind of dip, and then we're going to create our shell shape. And for now, we're not going to worry about all of the curves that are happening. We're going to sort of create a bit of a circle that's on its side. So first like this, and then we're just going to create another curve. So it's going to be really simple like that. Give everybody a chance to catch up before we get into the detail. So we're going to be readjusting the shape of this. And so as we get back to the shape here, we're going to start back toward the bottom of our shell. And so we have sort of this tip of the shell coming out here. And so we're going to create that. And that's going to look a little bit like this. And we're going to give it sort of an envelope look, right? It's going to kind of have this shape here, like so. Okay. Now, starting here at the bottom, we're now going to start to go around, and we're going to scallop the edge of our shell. And so if you want to lightly erase the line that you made, but you still want to make sure that you can see that it's going around. And then you're going to start scalloping, literally making bumps as you're going around, all around. There's a bit of a bigger bump here on the left. Now, what we're going to do with these is we're going to make them three-dimensional. So we'll be going back inside and sort of filling in the little shape underneath all of those bumps. And then when we get to the right side, before we get down over here, we're also going to create a bit of a line coming out because we're then going to create this one longer shape, one scalloped part of that shell. So I'll say that again. As we go around, we create the bumps, but then as we get to the right, we're going to sort of pause, come down here where this part of the shell is sticking out, kind of create a line because that shell is expanded. And then right over here, there's a bit of a sort of an insert, and then the shell comes out again, making those bumps. Now you may have to go back and fix some of the bumps as we're going, but that's okay. We have our basic shape of it. And we do want to make sure to then come back over here and create sort of that there's another piece of the shell that you're able to see. And so it kind of looks like a line and a bit of a bump. Making mine a little more angled here. And then we're going to create our pearl shape before we go back and do the rest. So our pearl is literally going to be a big round circle. It starts toward the edge of where the bottom of the shell is here. And you're just going to make a big round circle. That's going to be your beautiful pearl. And just take your time with that circle. Just do the best you can. And we're going to draw one thing inside that pearl shape. We're going to draw sort of a reflection shape. It's going to look a little like this. And then we'll draw a round dot on the other side. So that's just to give us an area where we know we're going to be creating some color in there. And then on the outside, when you're finished with that, we're going to create a shadow shape. So basically drawing the shadow right here. We're kind of pre-drawing that in. Okay, so it already looks like a shell. It should already kind of look like what we aim it to be. Um, Now we're going to finally go back to the shell. And right where we were starting that scalloped edge, we're now going to create, right next to those scallops, the parts of the inside of the shell. So we're kind of going around and creating, whoops, sort of lines that are right next to it, sort of on the side of it. Hello, Kim. Hi, Tony. Tony, I'm going to share the supplies with you in the chat. And let me get the other ones here. So, there you go. So we're tracing around. We've started our drawing and we're now tracing our other part or section that's happening kind of around the scalloped edge. And so basically what's happening with the shell is if this is the inside of the shell, sort of like my fingers are the part that's curling over. And so you're seeing the other side of the shell. And that's what that is. These little scalloped parts. If you think about a shell, you can kind of, a lot of times you see the other side of those little scalloped edges. So that's what this is. And then, if you like, you can add some lines kind of in between so that it looks even more like a shell, and we'll go back and we will, paint those, paint colors so that the shadows look more like the scalloped edges and the lines in between. Let everybody get caught up. We are going to make one more curved line over here on the right, and that's going to be coming from sort of this indent here. So we're just going to kind of follow that other line that we created. Here's the one, here's the other. And then we're going to start to create sort of some broken bits in our, the floor of our ocean here. So they're sort of going to look like little rocks. And I envisioned that they were for the most part. But I was looking at a picture under the sea, and there was just all this, just lots of sort of, I don't know if it was like broken shell or what, but there's sort of a lot of stuff at the bottom of the sea. So picture that I used, um, I just kind of took some liberties and added some of these um, parts. And some of them definitely looked like rocks. I don't know if it's rocks or sand, like, oh, maybe it is sea glass, Debbie. I never thought of that. Hmm, that's a good, it's a good observation. I love sea glass. I used to have a friend who made jewelry out of sea glass. She would make some really interesting things, and the colors were just amazing. I did put one more here at the bottom of the canvas here. It doesn't have to be perfectly the same as mine, but I kind of thought this looked good. Just with the way the painting was that I had it set up. Okay, so, and we are going to draw our bubbles. So we can lightly draw in some bubbles here. Basically what we're going to do is we are going to be, painting them, painting through them. It's probably the first things that we're going to be painting after we draw our background, or after we paint our background, I should say. So making some bubbles here of different sizes, some a little bit smaller. Right now we're just making them as circles. I'll let everyone get caught up and we're going to start painting. Again, with this one, the magic is really in our application of paint. So let's get started with that. And we are going to start off using our flat brush. You can also use your detail brush in tandem. So meaning that when you're getting close to the scalloped parts, because what we're going to do is we're going to start off at the with the background here. Basically, we're going to be doing the background and we're going to be doing the bottom as well, and then we'll finally do the shell. So you can take your round brush, and if you want to trace, as a matter of fact, let's start off that way. I don't normally start off that way, but let's do that because I think it's easier. So we're going to start off first with our detail brush, and we're going to start off with our blue. So not our turquoise, but our blue. And so basically, as always, all of this is layered, but blue is the main color in the background. So we're going to start to kind of edge around our scalloped shell. So you can see that I am tracing around each part. And then you're going to also, after you complete the scalloped edge of the shell, you're also going to go to the two curved lines on either side of the shell and do those. And then once you do that, we can now fill in the rest of the background. So I like to then sort of take my flat brush, and I think I have to get a new flat brush. This one is an older one that I'm using. And I don't know if it's going to do the job. But while I'm searching for another flat brush, what you want to do is do the entire background, but go around the bubbles. Here we are. I found the flat brush. Okay. So again, we are covering the background with our blue. We're going to be mixing other colors in with it. We are tracing around the outside of our bubbles for now. And again, what you might need to do is, keep going back to your round brush, especially to trace around the bubbles when you get to the right side. And just take your time. This should be semi-relaxing. It should actually all be relaxing. Just take your time. Oops. And then you can fill in the blue around your bubbles. It's much easier once you sort of outline those, and then you don't have to worry about kind of painting over them. But if you paint over them, it's no biggie either. We can, we're going to go back and recreate them, with our paint. So it's okay. Everyone's having a good summer. I feel like I feel like July is just flying. I always feel that way after 4th of July. It's like boom. And of course, all the stores are already like back to school stuff and I'm like, calm down. I know it's just the advertising. So, I try not to pay attention. Of course, as someone who buys back to school supplies with the art supplies, and they have all the sales already, I am sort of paying attention. Oh my gosh, are you serious, Renee? Christmas stuff is out. See, that's too much. That is too much. I've seen Halloween stuff, and so I'm a fall lover, so it's really hard for me to poo-poo on it. So I'm kind of like, woohoo! But I was always saying my sister is a huge summer and beach lover, and we just had this conversation because she stayed over the weekend with my niece, and she said no. I mean, she loves fall too, and she said, but you know what? This is beach time, so you need to get that out of the stores. I know a lot of people agree. So it also doesn't help. I'm in the middle of finishing fall programming, so my head has been in fall for the last month. So, someone who creates programs, you're always thinking ahead and you're not in the season. Although it is nice to be doing these because it keeps me in the season. Okay, so now that we have our first color down, we're going to now go into our bottom part and we're going to paint that turquoise. So just rinsing our brush or brushes, because now you're probably going to want to use your round brush to paint around each of the rocks and sea glass, as Debbie mentioned. Yeah, I think this probably is more sea glass than, or some sea glass and some rocks. And so just like we did with the bubbles, just kind of tracing around the outer, kind of outlining them. And then as we go back in with um, our flat brush, we can move a little bit faster because these are already kind of on our, planned in here. The other thing is you want to go to the edge. Ooh. Oh, yeah. Yep. So now you're going to make turquoise, Renee. Absolutely. Oh, so turquoise. Um, if you don't have turquoise, what you can do is you can use, let me think, yellow, blue. Um, so I'm trying to think. I haven't made turquoise in a while. Yellow and blue is kind of a greenish. And trying to think, is there some purple in there? If you have, or if you don't have the turquoise, you could also use a light blue. Basically, it has to be lighter than our top color. And you want it to be, a bit of a sea color. So you could use that blue if it's kind of that regular blue. Um, if you add a little bit of yellow, you're going to get green. Hold on, let me take a look at this. I'm thinking um, adding a little bit of purple, but do it first. Ah, gotcha. Yeah, use the light blue. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and a little bit of white. Yeah, Debbie's right. And a little bit of white. Blue, green, and a little bit of white. I love it, Debbie. I know I haven't made turquoise in the longest time and I'm stumped. And I'm like, I feel like you're right. It's like I know it's yellow and green. I don't know why I'm thinking there's some purple in it too. Yeah, I don't have my color wheel next to me, so could look it up. It's just I'm on both blue and green. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I've gotten so lazy and I just buy my colors. Thanks, Debbie. So as you're seeing, I am painting the entire bottom. Perfect. You're welcome, Renee. And thanks to Debbie. Why sometimes it is good to mix your own colors because I tend to forget when I haven't worked with them in years or, I haven't mixed that in so long. Should probably have a color wheel. I have color wheels. They're just away somewhere. Every summer, I kind of reorganize for the following year because I kind of go according to like a school year. So my art room slash office right now is quite messy. It's kind of a fun, creative mess, though, I think. But I definitely wouldn't be able to find my color wheel right now. It'll get there. So this is kind of what it should look like. Just the basic blue and the basic turquoise. And we're going to start combining the two backgrounds. Well, the kind of the background in where the shell is, and then the floor of the sea. And the way we're going to start to do that is we're now going to start integrating some turquoise in the sky first. And so, as you can see, there's all of these colors that are happening in the background. And so, we're going to start layering some of the turquoise and we're going to go in strokes. As you can see, the lightest part is up here in the top left corner. And so, we're going to want to add some turquoise, sort of light turquoise. So what I mean is light on your brush, and you're kind of going to do it in strokes, almost like stripes, like this. And as you get to your bubbles, you're going to very carefully do it around there as well. So like this. So if you can see, let me move my other light so you can just see a little bit of what I'm doing. So the other part here is darker. So we don't have to go toward the bottom part of the bubbles, but we're just going to kind of go toward the left side and the rest of our painting here, because we're going to start making this background multicolored or multi-layered, really. So our first step, again, is just some swipes of turquoise like this. You can still see that it's on the blue background, but now we're actually going to grab our purple as well. So this is going to be a process where we are adding strokes of the color, swipes of it. And the purple is more around the actual shell, and then on the left side and the right side at the bottom. So I'll say that again as we are doing it. We're going to start here on the left side of the shell, and I'm going to get into my purple. So I'm going to put my purple on my plate just so it's a little easier. You all probably have your colors out. And then I'm going to go over here to the left side and start to create sort of a purple splotch here. Now it looks really dark right now, but we're going to go back in. And then we're going to trace around our shell with the purple. So you may or may not want to switch to your smaller brush. And it's okay if you have some blue on that brush still. It's going to lighten up the purple. So here I am. Oops, here's my purple. Tracing around the shell on the side of where our blue is, making sure to trace around each scallop. You can use a little bit of water in your paint if your paint is starting to dry. I'm saying that because mine is drying a bit. I have a fan on underneath my desk because I'm always warm lately, and it's kind of drying out my paints. So here's the other thing. We're going to now, on the right side, go down into where the shell is scalloped. And then we're going to paint that purple into that sort of bumpy area that we kind of pre-drew. So it's going to look like that. So that's your first step of adding the purple. And if you have that step down, your next step is going to be mixing some purple with your blue, because we're then going to start creating, remember those swipes that we started doing? You're going to start doing them on the left side while your paint is wet. And you're going to make those swipes go up towards your top left corner. So again, this is with blue and purple mixed in. We're going to go back in and add a little bit of turquoise on top of it. As far as where the bubbles are, you're going to start to go towards the bottom right. This is the dark blue with the purple. Yep, so this is the dark blue with the purple, Renee, and then you're mixing it with the purple. And so you should now have it be quite dark on the left side and the right bottom side of your painting, right where it's curving. And when you're done with that, you're going to mix some black with some purple, because that's going to be the next color that's going to go on the right side of your shell. So again, the next color you're going to mix is black and purple so that you're going to get this sort of dark kind of violet color. And you're going to go on the right side of your shell, right on the, um, still in the background part. You're going to kind of trace around some of those scallops towards the bubbles. And then you're really going to darken that area with the same, sort of the same thing we've been doing, using your round brush, your smaller brush, and making swipes of that purpley black. And what you're going to do is you're now going to go through these two bubbles, just enough so you can still kind of see that they are there. And then before you move on, you're actually going to then take some white on your brush and you're going to make white round circles on top of the the blackish purple that you just did for those two bubbles. Um, we're going to do the same to the other ones. But for now, we're just going to make very light white circles. So do you see, I just have a tiny bit on my brush and I'm kind of dotting around the outside of it because I don't want the white line to be so solid. And you're going to do that same process with the other bubbles. So we're now going to concentrate on the top right corner of our painting. So basically, the colors that we used outside the bubbles, you're going to extend those colors into the bubbles. And as soon as you do that, you're then going to make a bubble with the white. So here I am over here. I'm going to kind of dot over these two bubbles. And I'm just doing a little bit to add a little bit of blue here. I did it enough so that I can still see that my outline, where my outline should be. Now, if you do it where you've drawn over your outline, that's okay, because we can go back and just draw the white. Now, I did this really light, so using the white. So I'm just going to kind of show that up close. See that bubble that I did, that tiny one right there? I just did a tiny bit of white, and we're going to go back and make them even more bubble-like. But for now, we just want to draw the white around that shape so that we know that the bubbles are there. So we're going to do that to the rest of the bubbles. So basically, you're going to be kind of copying the background that you've already done. Paint it inside those bubbles. And then add your white around that. Now, if it's a little too wet, um, you can wait a little bit, or you can just kind of just dot it on with my brush in a circular fashion. I use the point of my round brush in order to do it. And then later on, we can go back and clean it up a little more. Oh, so Debbie, basically, as we're making our bubbles, the background, yes, white on the outside of the bubbles. So basically, show you the original. So the bubbles are really just white lines around the background. So if you're not worried about where you are placing your bubbles, you can just go back and paint over them if it makes it easier for you, and then go back and just make white lines in the spots where you would like your bubbles. Though I was doing it this way because we drew the bubbles first in their, in their spots, and then we go back in and we recreate some of the background inside those bubbles. But then we have to make a white circle so that it looks like a bubble. But we're just making the white circle for now. We're going to go back and make a little shadow around each of the circles using black. We're going to add a little bit of more white spots. But so that's what we're doing. But if you don't mind going back and repainting the bubbles in their spots, then you can just, and that's for anybody, you can just paint over the bubbles with the background because the background shows through the bubbles. And we're going to start to add some yellow and blue, making green. It's going to be our next color to add in that bubbled area. So you can use the light blue. But you're going to start adding swipes of some yellow and green, or yellow and blue, which makes the green, in the top right corner. And then as you're going toward the rest of the painting at the top here, you can also add it on top of the purple. And I'm doing this with my my smaller brush, my round brush. And then I do a little bit of adjusting and add some more turquoise on top of that, just to make it a bit lighter, because our next step is going to be adding white. So I just went on and I mixed some yellow and blue. And I went back, I made swipes all over background. And then depending on how much lighter you want things, you can go back in and add some turquoise. We're going to be adding a little bit of white. This is still to our background up top.
What color were you doing? What color were you doing with the yellow?
Oh, with the yellow and blue.
Yellow, blue. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Yep, so I'm making kind of like a green. And then swiping how we did the strokes before with the blue and the purple and the purpley black. And then I went back and added turquoise even on top of that too. And I may add a little more blue now. Basically now what we're doing is we're just mixing, having a nice mix of these colors. But you want to keep the dark around the outside of the scalloped shell. So if you can tell, I kind of swipe up close to where the scalloped is happening, but I like to keep sort of that dark edge around there. And then we're going to let that dry so that when we go back to the white, it won't mix in as much. And we're now going to go down to the bottom part of our painting, and we're going to mix some white with our turquoise and also make some white with our blue, so we have the light blue. So we're mixing two colors now. We are mixing white and blue to make a lighter blue. We are also mixing white with some turquoise to get a light turquoise. So let's see, where's my white? There's my light turquoise. My light blue, I have to add a little more blue to that. But what we're basically going to do is create a painterly effect now on top of the blue or turquoise that we created. We're also going to be using our yellowish green. So here again, you may want to mix some more yellow into your blue to get that green. I also mix yellow and turquoise. So here are the colors that we need. This was the yellow and green, or I'm sorry, I keep saying yellow and green. This was the yellow and blue. You can see it's kind of a greenish. And I added a little bit of turquoise. This color is light blue. So white and blue. Our third color is turquoise and white to create a light turquoise. So those three colors, and then, we'll sporadically be using our blue, but what we're doing with this is kind of creating a painterly look of, oops, that's a little too much yellowy white. We're creating sort of a painterly look of the bottom portion of the sea. So we're starting off with like that light turquoise. We're going to start adding white to it on top of it. So light turquoise, which we mixed in, and we're doing that kind of right in the center underneath where our shell is. You might paint over a little bit of some of your stones or sea glass, but that's okay. As long as you can still see them, see the shape of them, we're going to go back and we're going to be, making them look a little more like sea glass. Now, it depends on which brush you want to use. It's okay if you want to go back and just use your round brush. I kind of start to use my flat brush and then I go back in to add some more, little more detail around, the parts that are a little bit tight. But while I'm coming over here to the right side, so we do that color here in the center, you want to add some yellowish blue, right? That was the yellow, it's really the green. You want to mix that in while your paint is wet. And you can add scoops of white paint like this as well, sort of like, kind of a painterly fashion, light parts of it on top of all of that. And we're going to start going into the left side and the right side of our paintings. Because right now we're kind of going into the middle. And I like to add some dabs of white here for our light source that's happening. So I'm just kind of taking my white and going from left to right in this one particular spot. And then our next spot on the left side over here, we're going to start adding some blue in the back, right up against the purple, because we're going to kind of blend in right where the purple meets the blue. And we're going to also use that bluish purple that we used before. So if you have to mix more, I definitely have to mix some more. We're going to create some dark spots using bluish purple to kind of create a dark line right up against. See where we created that purple up top? This is now bluish purple, blue mixed with the purple, and we're kind of creating some dark areas with it. Again, that's bluish purple. So basically, you have the purple above, right? Now the bluish purple, and it's a little bit lighter. And we're going to use it on the right side as well, going up against that purple. So 2 spots. Well, and we're actually going to go in these 2 spots, and then right underneath our shell, kind of outlining on the surface or on the ground floor. So again, this is purple and blue mixed together. We're also going to add some of that bluish purple to the bottom right corner here of our canvas. And we're going to add it in a few more places, which is going to be underneath each of the rocks on the right side. So I'll say that again. That purpley blue is going to be in 3 different spots. Toward the left side, sort of on this hilly area, and you can still see a bit of the blue underneath kind of on there. Then you're going to swipe underneath right up against the shell on the bottom. And then you're going to continue it into kind of the hilly part here. That's with that bluish purple. And then at the bottom right corner of your C, right here, that bluish purple. And then your other part, the bluish purple, is going to go under, kind of outlining underneath each of your stones, because that is going to be part of the shadow of where those stones are. So this is my blue and purple, and just right underneath each of the stones. Um, do some over here too on the left. But they're all on the right side. All those stones on the right side, you want to take that bluish purple and just swipe under each of the stones. You're kind of like outlining them underneath. So can you see that it's a little bit darker under each of the stones here? That's that bluish purple. And then I did it on the 1, 2, 3, 4 of these on the left side. It's just a hint of that darker color because that is sort of the shadowing. And then we're going to go in with some yellow and orange around it on the right side. So grabbing some orange, doing this with my round brush, the detail brush. Gonna add some orange all around the stones. So you can see I'm not making it really thick orange because I'm going to go back and add yellow to it and a little bit of purple. So there's the orange. So this is done as it's wet. And then just a little bit of yellow. It's mixing in with the orange. Right, so it's becoming a bit lighter. But you want to make sure, not to cover over the purple, the purpley blue that you put down underneath each of the rocks. You may have to go back in with a little more orange. But I'm doing very light, very light application of the color so that it mixes in. And then you're going to add tiny bit of turquoise and orange mixed in. So that's going to sound strange, but you're going to grab a little bit of your turquoise and orange, and you're going to kind of make this muddy, kind of like a muddy green color. It's going to look like that. And that's going to be the darker color that you're adding right up top where the curve is happening, where it meets with the purple. And then also you're going to add it around the stones as well. So you'll have a multitude of colors happening here. So you can still see my yellow coming through, bit of the orange. You know, if you want, you can swipe a little more orange on top of that kind of greenish, and especially in the bottom corner on top of the blue. The goal is to have a lot of color, you know, all those colors kind of peeking through on the right side. And then we add a swipe of like that purpley orange in the bottom right. So when you're done with having all of that, you know, that greenish color that we mixed the turquoise and orange with, you're then going to add some purple to orange in the bottom corner, right on top of bottom right corner. And just kind of fade that a little bit into the all this color right above it. And then I like to go in while everything is still wet with my blue and go up into where it's a little bit hilly here and just add a little bit blue there, and then a little bit kind of into the light bluish part in the bottom. And we need to mix up a little bit of gray for our stones, for sea glass, tiny bit. So white and black for some gray. Those are going to go on the right side on our stones. So a really tiny bit. And you're going to paint them on top of, you know, kind of in the middle of where, you know, you have your, you know, your bluish purple underneath. So you're going to use that, you know, it's such a light gray, you know, and then we even go back in with some white afterward to add some highlights to each of the stones. Usually I like to add it on like one corner of the stone, usually the left. just because the light source is coming from the top left corner. Sometimes I go back and add a few more kind of stones, that shade. And we're going to do that same color, that very light gray. So let me just show you that. It's like such light gray. You can do the same in the ones on the left. And it's just a real quick, you know, it's kind of a real quick cover of the color. Doing the same where you add a little bit of white after you do that on one side. We're still using our round brush for the most part. And we're now going to go in with that greenish, sort of that greenish turquoise color over here on the top left side, going around our rocks. So here again, we're making, some different colors. We're making the ground kind of multicolored, adding in some yellowy, kind of that yellowy green, and then also just adding a little bit of yellow, having the colors still sort of shine through. And this is that kind of yellowish green. Go back in and add a little more turquoise. The goal is to have, again, lots of color, different colors in the ground. I'm adding a little more little dots of yellow here in the bottom left corner while the paint is still wet. And we do have quite a bit of yellow right here in the top, kind of this area. Some kind of chunks of yellow. And then here in the middle, on top of what we did, you want to add a little bit of watered down white. So here, so you can even, so I took my brush and I added a little bit of some water to it, and then I added white. And I get this sort of milky, kind of a milky white color for this middle section. Oh, and then a few splotches of white on top of it here in the edges of the painting. It's a little bit lighter over here. And then we're going to make another gray that's a little bit darker than the other one was. The other one was like almost a white gray. This one has a little more, so a little bit darker, because then we're just going to go under on the left side of our stones. Yeah, and you may have to add in a little bit of black. Um, this is for the shadowing under each of the rocks here. And then when you're ready, we're going to use our flat brush to do the white light that's coming from the top left corner. So you get quite a bit on the tip of your brush, and you start off in the corner here. And you're going to kind of make it go down, right? Almost like a line going towards the shell. And then you're going to start taking that color and you're going to start bringing it down to the rest. So I added a little bit, again, I went back, added just a little bit water, and now I'm going to spread that out. The lightest part or brightest part of it should be in the corner here. You can add a bit of yellow as well, mixed with white over here toward the right side. And you're just going to start kind of expanding it, going towards the shell. You can do a little bit toward the bubbles. And this is where you want to then kind of go back into your bubbles. Once you're finished with that side. And the tip of your brush again, you're going to add white to, and you can make some sort of a little bit of white dots in the bubbles to make them look more bubbly or bubble-like. But the other thing is, you can take a little bit of that gray, say, and even black, and kind of go on the outside of the bubble, even the inside. But it should be a little bit darker. It should be more towards black. So you may have to add some more black. And then you kind of just want to trace around one section of the outside of the bubble, and then sometimes on the inside, just to kind of outline it and give it a little bit of some bubble-like, you know. I think my one bubble here is a little too wet, so I'm going to wait for that one to dry a little more. And you can go back to your bubbles later on if it's still a little wet. Um, but that will now take us to our shell, which is going to be a mixture of white and blue. So we're going to have like a light blue. So this color. And we're going to start painting at the edge of our shell here, and kind of painting where the edges meet the top part. And then also where the lines are. So again, that blue, light blue, is going to go toward the round part at the bottom of the shell. And then on the lines of the shell, because that's going to be the darker areas. And then we're now going to, over here on the right side, get darker with adding blue, a combination of blue and black. So I'm going to grab blue, and we're going to mix some black to make it a really dark blue. We're going to mix that. Add a little more blue. So it's going to kind of be this grayish black or grayish blue. And then you're going to come over to the left side. You're going to outline here and in the shadow part to the right side of your pearl. So that was, Renee, that was a combination of blue and black so that it's sort of a, it's almost like a grayish blue. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of lighten up our brush with some water with that color. And what I do is so let me show you. I added a little bit of water to my brush so it's a little bit more liquidy. And then I'm kind of turning my brush so that the point is very pointy. And then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to trace around each of the parts of where the shell is kind of going over. And some of these, I kind of go in the middle of it, you can see. And I'm also going to go here. Yep, on the inside, Debbie, yep. Yeah, so remember on the outside, we already have a bit of that black. Now we go on the inside, and then I also go, like I'm separating them because they're little curved pieces. I also go here and under here. Now you might want to refresh a little of your water at this point, as we're doing the last parts of the shell and the pearl. So you might want to get yourself some fresh water. Mine's a little muddy. Go do that. Okay, so we should have some fresh water. We're now going to go in with blue. We're going to make it dark right around the left side, right around the pearl on the left. And then using this blue, we're going to leave this part here. We're going to go into the pearl and we're going to make a mix of blue and white. So it's going to be a light blue, but we're going to mix a lot more white in so that it's an incredibly light blue. So it's going to be more like this. We're painting around the two parts that we created, the circle part and sort of this, part that's a little bit kidney shaped, I guess. This is an incredibly light blue. And then we're going to grab white. Yep. And on top of the circle, we're going to make that a dab of white. So this is where lots of our colors are going to start to come into this pearl. Remember that greenish that we used? We're going to add that to the top right side of the pearl. And our next colors, we're going to make a lavender, a really light lavender color. And that's going to be on the left side, inside our pearl. We can mix it with the green when we get to the around the right side. So that's lavender. That is white and purple. Okay, we're not going inside yet in this part yet. That's going to be darker. You're then going to mix a little bit of blue with that um, lavender you just did. And you're going to start to go on the inside of that shape. And that's the first color that you put down to fill it in. Yes. The light blue with a little bit of the purple. And then we add some turquoise. So we add the turquoise inside a little bit of this shape and then mixing in a little on the left in sort of a curved line. And you can go up top a little bit too to make it a little darker. So again, this is turquoise. Kind of go around our pearl, little on the inside here. And then we're going to grab a bit of white on the tip of our brush because I'm going to add a highlight on the left side of the pearl and kind of on the right. And then on the inside, some white, kind of on the turquoise part. Then I like to add a little more yellowish green. Tiny bit of purple. So you want to basically mix everything so that it's kind of lightish I even start to add a little bit of blue here too. Now, if it looks too dark, you want to go back and add some more white. We're going to blend. And we're going to add a little bit of blue into remember we did this sort of black over here. We're going to add a little bit of blue now on top of the dark. And then I go back in and I add a little more black as well, so that it's kind of mixed with a little bit of blue and black. And now we're going to go back to our lavender. So if you haven't mixed up enough lavender, you want to do that now. So that's going to be all on the inside of our shell. So what we're doing now is we are now adding that lavender to the lines in each section of the shell parts. We're going to add lavender and turquoise at the same time, so that we're kind of creating in each section sort of this bluish lavender line, because then we're going to go white in between each of those. So our next part after doing that is we're going to go in with our white, going right around the pearl to the right side. See how we're tracing around? You want to also then trace around your shadow here on the right side. Now you're going to start swiping up in between each of the colors, the bluish lavender. You're going to swipe in between for your pearl. Or I'm sorry, not your pearl, your the white parts in between those shapes. Now, at the same time, you can go back in and add a little more lavender in between as you're doing that. I like to go up top in each section and just add some more blue underneath each section, right? Like scalloped areas. And then bring it down a little bit into each of those lines. And you're going to take your white and you're also going to go back in at the top of each section where, the scalloped curved parts are. And I have a lot of white on the tip. And now I'm making each of those sections some white, as it's curving around so that you can still see a piece. It's like a piece of that curving. And we go into the part here at the bottom and we do the same, but we're also going to add a little bit of lavender as our finishing touch. So here again with the white, you go back into the edge of the shell, the scalloped parts, and you're now making those a little more, you're making them a little more scalloped, but we add a little bit of lavender to the inside of the envelope part and then a little underneath. Then we just have one more spot where we have to make a little bit darker. And that's on the left side here. We add some black in with a little bit of blue and sort of outline on the left side of the pearl. A little right underneath here. Like to see what everyone's looks like. Thank you so much for staying extra. This was a longer one. So I'm going to remove my spotlight. I'm going to stop the recording.